Hi, everybody. Welcome to Truly Inspirational People, our tips series. This is actually podcast 11. We had a little bit of a break, and a happy new year to you, I should say. And today I'm very, very excited with our guest. She's actually joining us from the other side of the Atlantic. And so over there it's 10 a.m. Over here it's 3 p.m. And last year, I had a beautiful experience. I was honored to be teaching at a retreat called the Enrich Retreat, which was organized by a beautiful lady. She's a systemic relationship coach called Daria Haterglue. And this is a lady I'd actually met through a project that I'd co-founded, which was the mass meditation event, Unplug Space, which we ran the year before. And it just never ceases to amaze me how many amazing connections I am making at this time in my life. The Enrich Retreat actually launched in Mykonos, Greece last year, and it was an incredible agenda. So the agenda included energy presentations, meditations from experts, and workshops. And the idea was actually to use specific neuroscientific practices to improve communication, connection, intimacy, and well-being in relationships. And at this event, as is often the case when you are at these amazing events, I met a truly kindred spirit. And I really can say that because this lady we're both Cancerians, and our work has manifested in very similar ways. So I think we need to do a bit of work around that. And now this lady, she's actually she's a qualified, trained pharmacist, and her work has taken her on a much more spiritual level. So she has now evolved her practice. She's created a system called Wholistic, which is WHOLISTIC. I look at it as a way of whole body healing. That's kind of the way that I get my head around it. But she's going to tell us a lot more. And her work today is taking her all over the world. She also has, she's developing online content and an online course. And the big news is that she actually authored her first book this year. So she's going to tell us more about that. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Elena. Welcome, Elena. Elena, tell us, what is well-being to you?
Hi, Sunita. And I just love hearing you and speaking with you. It's such a joy. So thank you for inviting me. What is well-being to me? Well-being, first of all, is freedom to navigate through life, through day-to-day life with joy and ease. And, throughout life, throughout daily life, we might encounter all kinds of roadblocks. So seeing roadblocks, I would say, more as invitations for us to learn more about ourselves and not be affected so much and know how to release and not store things within our body, within our system. And really, it's about feeling balanced and full of love and joy.
Okay. Now, your journey, very, very special journey, you actually started off life as a pharmacist. So, what I would consider really to be quite a different area to where you are now. Can you tell us a bit more about this journey? Really,
Yes.
the lessons that you've had and how it's brought you to where you are today.
Yes. Yeah. So the first thing I think about why I chose the path of a pharmacist. I remember being 4 years old as a little girl. I grew up in Kiev, Ukraine, walking by a pharmacy. And at that time, it was like an old world kind of pharmacy where through the glass, I could see women or men. To me, it seemed like they were mixing some kind of magical potions. And I was so inspired. And I remember looking and thinking, okay, when I grow up, I want to create a magical potion to make my parents and my family live a long life and healthy life. So that's kind of where it began. Of course, as a child, I suffered a lot. I had a lot of pneumonia, bronchitis, allergies growing up, GI issues. And as I grew older, I experienced asthma in my 20s, severe asthma. I moved to Florida. I just had my first son. And I remember going to the doctor. And at that time, I was already a pharmacist. I went to the doctor and because I literally could not inhale or exhale. I couldn't breathe. And he said to me, okay, you have an option, for option number one, we're going to admit you to the hospital. Okay. And I said, that's not an option for me. What else can you recommend? He said, okay, I'm going to give you a steroid injection, and you're going to actually be on 6 medications for the rest of your life. So I was in my early to mid 20s. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this is definitely not the way I want to live my life. Mm-hmm. So it sort of began as my awakening process into, okay, what can I do? So I began researching for myself first of how, and recognizing how our diet and our environment impacts our health. And of course, emotions play a major role in it as well. So I recognized that I was consuming foods that were creating imbalance in my system, such as dairy, gluten. I was eating a lot of fruit. Which all of it, it's high fructose. Now, what does dairy do? Dairy is mucogenic. So for people who have bronchitis, asthma, this is the worst thing to consume, right? So I sort of began this journey into wellness and healing, being my own investigator. Of course, I found mold in my house. So we had to have our house treated for mold. So there were many, many layers into discovering this. And then, of course, one of my first son had severe eczema as a baby too. So he, I would say, was also one of my biggest teachers in learning more about what we eat and how it truly affects and plays a major role in our wellness. So by changing his diet, his symptoms went away as well. And then a few years went by. At that time, I already had 4 children. I worked in a pharmacy about 30 hours a week. I went to take a course. It's actually a fellowship. I enrolled myself into a fellowship. It's called the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, which later on became a master's program at USF College of Medicine, and then it became a PhD program. And I remember walking into this first module, they call it the module, and one of the cardiologists had us get up. And he said, today we're going to practice Qigong. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? What is Qigong? So this was 12 years ago.
Okay, yeah, and when it was still, not so mainstream.
And this was from a physician.
Yeah.
Right? Who was much older. He was in his late 60s, perhaps 70s. And I remember a room full of probably over 200 physicians were all sitting, and we had to stand up and practice. And that was truly, for me, the major awakening point in my life, because I became aware for the first time of the energy flow or energy current between my hands.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So up until that point, what I believe is every human being has this ability. I just wasn't aware of it. So I became so hungry with understanding how this is even possible. And it was only for 15 minutes that we practiced it during the break. And I came back home thinking, okay, this is something I want to investigate for myself, but also for people I was working with. So at that time I was working in a compounding pharmacy, making the potions that I always dreamed about. But then realizing that actually those potions were filled with chemicals. And that was another light bulb that went on in my head. Even though we were mixing all these ingredients, I never actually truly looked to search and understand that what these ingredients were. And one of my biggest ingredient awakeners was BHT, the butylated hydroxytoluene, which is used as an antioxidant and a preservative to extend the shelf life of products, but it's also used in canned foods. So a lot of times, the canned food industry will put this into products, but what is BHT? It's actually an endocrine disruptor, right? So, and they found that women or even men, it disrupts your hormone cycle. So it decreases testosterone in males, and also in females, your estrogen gets metabolized into a completely different pathway.
So this was going into all the products that you were making?
All the products that I was making.
And these were pharmaceutical products?
These are pharmaceutical products, custom-made products, and to this day, I would tell you pretty much everything has it.
Wow.
Unless you make you're conscious enough and you're seeking for an organic company or natural company. So that was my second wake-up call. At that time, I was also analyzing people's blood work. I was looking at the data of, looking at hormones, looking at vitamin deficiency, nutritional deficiencies, working with gut health. But what I started to recognize, the numbers a lot of times did not correspond to what was really happening with the entire human being. So at that time I was studying different healing modalities along with functional medicine. And then I decided to transition fully into the work that I do, because I recognize that there's something much greater into the cause of creating or being the cause of the disease that most people experience.
Do you think through that journey then there was what we say, there was just such a conscious shift in you?
Yes.
Yeah. And that then led you to committing to the training and actually going on the journey from a theoretical point of view, getting the qualifications.
Yes.
And
absolutely. Absolutely. It was very conscious. It was also a challenging path to take, as you might know. Going from
long career.
Yes, going from something that was convenient and known, right, from all my family members, my friends, to sort of going into the waters, unknown territory, and not knowing where it's going to take you. But the only thing that I knew is I wanted to seek for truth, and I was following my heart. And I made a full commitment to any decision that I made from that point on was always going to be from my heart, from my love. It's for bettering myself, my family, and of course, then it became about others as well.
So Elena, tell us, so through this journey, you must have brought your own self-care practices into it. So you changed the food that you was eating, you changed the products that you was using. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like? So our viewers, if they're going through similar things, you know, there may be something that they hear from you that actually they think, wow, I can make that shift myself.
So it doesn't require a lot of changes, but once you make the change, it's important to stick with it. Some of the things that I incorporate in my daily life are breath work. I think is so powerful and important. And anytime over the years, whenever I felt stressed, this is actually the number one tool I go to is breathing and walking.
And
walking, being in nature is so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's also something that most of us forget to do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So moving my body.
Yeah. If you're living in an urban city and, you know, I mean, certainly if you live in London, you get up early in the morning, you're on the tube, you know, there's every excuse to not connect with nature. And, you know, but yeah, it's so important. It makes such a difference to just the way that we feel. And as I was researching, I mentioned this to you, as I was researching your work, I mean, there's incredible articles that you've written that you've shared on different platforms. And one of them is one where you speak very openly about how actually breath work, when we go, you know, because of the experiences that we have in life, we may get blocked, we may be clammed up, and we may be feeling feelings of guilt and emptiness. And so I'm understanding that your work, it's more than almost, it's not just the physical ailments that we may see, it's emotional, it's deeper. Tell us about that.
Yes. So of course I started my work in a physical work, right?
Ailments, yes. Yeah.
Yes. And then I recognized there's something much greater that is influencing that. So then I transition into, okay, how do emotions play into manifesting the disease? So I always say to people I work with, our higher self communicates to our physical body through very, very powerful messages. Those messages are emotions. Now, when we choose to tune them out, the messages become louder, and they will become louder in the form of symptoms, anxiety, depression. If we choose to tune them out even longer, or I would say, I call it parking them in a long-term parking garage, okay? That would be storing them somewhere deep in our tissues. Actually, what happens is those messages turn into physical disease. So I wanted to go backwards, right? And find out, where is this coming from? And I recognize there's so many systems, you know, for example, the chakra systems that is very important to understand, because it's sort of like the bridge between our higher self and how information flows in our physicality. But what I uncovered over the years is something much greater. And this information is called the morphogenetic field of information. So every single living thing on this planet has its own morphogenetic field of information. So for example, dolphins have their own morphogenetic field. Dogs have their own. Crystals have their own, and human beings do as well. So what is this morphogenetic field of information? Actually, we, in the physical, in this three-dimensional world, are a manifestation of this information field. We decided to incarnate and experience life on this planet in this three-dimensional duality realm, to experience it and feel things, okay? So the information, so imagine that this morphogenetic field of information is sort of like a cloud, right? So if you're a computer system, this is your cloud that stores every experience, every emotion, every situation that ever happened to you, as well as, let's say you might have viruses in your system, parasites, bacteria. And what I've noticed over the years, just like computers accumulate all these viruses, right? We do too.
Yeah, we do as well.
So here's what triggered for me to understand this even deeper. Let's say a person has chronic fatigue syndrome, right? And there's many viruses that are involved. It could be Epstein-Barr, herpes number 6. I would treat the viruses using herbs. The viruses would go away, but then a year or two later, those viruses would come back again. And I thought, why is it coming back? Well, there's a reason why. Because when we're treating things on a physical level, the information field that the microorganism leaves, it leaves in our own morphogenetic field of information. And it leaves it in the holographic field. So that means not only does a person on a physical level has to be treated for that microorganism, but also the holographic field of information of that microorganism needs to be erased, just like a virus or a parasite from the computer system. Okay,
Elena, this is seriously big work. So you know, I have to ask, how do you clear that energy field? How know, how do you diagnose, and then how do you clear it?
So I have a way of, it takes me about 5 hours to analyze somebody's field. And there's so many layers, because that's why I started to say this is a morphogenetic field. Then it goes through something called Shen. And then we also know traditional Chinese medicine talks about miracle meridians and meridian system before it goes into chakras. So all of this makes up the soul anatomy before it goes into our physicality and into our physical anatomy. Okay. So I go into the field of information. Takes me about 5 hours, and measure. So a person will have very concrete information on what they have down to their cellular level. So we're going to know if they're storing emotions, where they're storing their emotions, where there's blockages in the meridian system. So this particular work is really complementary to everything else a person is doing. But for me, it's about erasing things that don't belong in the field, and then realigning and syncing the field with your physicality.
Okay. So the people that are coming to you that you're helping with this system, what are they coming to you with?
Gosh, I'm working with people all around the world. I don't have to see them anymore. I have people in Australia. I have people with tumors. I have people with severe fatigue, narcolepsy. Actually, we just got a woman off of her narcolepsy drugs. So she's able to sleep better. You know, we're working. This is a work in progress. So we just started this work with her. Anxiety, depression, viruses. So a lot of times what happens is with people, because I'm strictly working in the information field, people will go through something initially that's called healing crises, where all these symptoms will pop up because it has to leave your field of information. So I have a woman with brain tumors now. Her doctor had suggested for her to come and find someone that she can work with naturally. So there's all kinds of people depending on what issues they have. Somebody with bipolar, depression disorders.
And how about you? You know, how do you, because this is, again, it's very deep work for you. So if somebody goes to see a doctor, the doctor will analyze, they'll spend some time with them. This work is different because look, 5 hours you're spending diagnosing, you know, you're getting right into the crux of it. So how do you also make sure your energy field is protected, that you're not depleted? What do you do for yourself?
That's a great question. And it's something I had to learn over the years because, as you know, when you are an empath and a healer in a way, you want to give everything you've got to this person. So For me, when I analyzed the field, I made a commitment to only analyze one person per day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to block out times to do that. I used to do more, and I said, okay, I can't do that because it's exhausting for me too. And I literally sit there for hours analyzing the field of information. And so that's one of the ways. Of course, every morning I make sure I eat my breakfast. I take my vitamins. I cook breakfast. I eat breakfast with my children, and then movement is important for me. So every morning I actually do something physically for at least 30 minutes to activate my own flow, because I'm sitting and analyzing the information for hours, and I have to, and then going for walks later in the day is very important for me as well. And then breath work. Yes.
Now your platform, it's beyond just your practice as a can I say, shall I call you a holistic clinician? What shall I call you, Elena?
Yeah, holistic practitioner.
Yeah, practitioner. So it's beyond that. It's much greater and it's growing. So I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, you've just authored your first book. So tell us about that. Tell us what it's called and tell us what the content is.
Yes, the book is called Wholistic Wisdom, Awakening Your Inner Healer. The reason I decided, it took me many years to put this book together, and I made a decision that, for me, a lot of people want to call me a healer, but I don't feel I'm a healer. I feel I'm more of a messenger to give people the freedom and the information needed to awaken their own healing abilities. And I empower people in recognizing that I'm not the one healing them. Their doctor is not the one healing them. They're the ones healing themselves. So I wish I knew the information I know now, but perhaps this is one of the reasons I put this book together, is to give people the courage and the knowledge and the information needed so they can begin this process.
Yeah.
The book is divided into 3 parts: the body, mind, emotions, and soul. And we go very specifically into the gut health, which is really the core of everything, adrenals, liver, toxicity, detoxification, how to detoxify, because this is such a misunderstood topic. And then we go into mind. And mind to me is the bridge that connects it all. But to me, mind is actually the heart itself. Right? So, which is the biggest mind that we have. And then, of course, there's ways that people in my book are able to measure in less than a minute what emotion is blocked and how to balance it, so that people can also diagnose what food sensitivities they have in less than a minute. This is why I felt this was important, to give people some kind of information and knowledge that they can incorporate immediately into their life. And then the third part of the book is all about the soul, the anatomy of the soul. There's different tools that I provide as well. I speak about aromatics, crystals, different color light therapies that people can incorporate, either it's through visualization or actually using the light wands on themselves. And then sacred geometry, and incorporating, say, sacred geometry symbols into balancing their own system. So there's a way to test their own symbols, sacred geometry symbols that their system will need, because we're constantly shifting ourselves day to day. Our cells are turning over, recreating. Our whole system is recreated so fast. And it's important to understand that what is working for you today might not be working for you tomorrow.
Yeah. But what I love, Elena, I love just the way that you share that, but the energy that comes with it is a lot of these concepts traditionally have been kept, in there for our, the holistic practitioners that maybe, have the information, but they're not working on a mainstream level. And actually what you're doing here is where you're sharing it in a mainstream way that actually anyone can access this information. This isn't just the gifted few, or it isn't just those that go on retreats. And, it's there for everyone to be able to experience. Now, you're also taking this work further because you're also developing your own training programs. So tell us about that.
Yes, I just finished filming my first 8-week online course. It's called Awakening Your Inner Healer. Wow, it's a big project, but I'm so excited because this is also, it's taking the book to a whole other level, where people are going to not only immerse themselves into practicing these things, but at the end, they're going to walk away and create their own lifestyle, because what I'm teaching is not necessarily right for each person. But I want them to understand this is the tools Elena has.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm sharing. But from all of the information that I've shared, my goal is for each person to be courageous, to trust themselves, and create their own system that works best for them, based on my teachings.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now the course is also they're for, so a general public can join your 8-week course. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so
yes.
when will that be launched? When will that be available?
So that should be launched in the next 2 months.
Okay.
And then the second step is going to be an invitation for all those who are practicing different healing modalities, who perhaps are physicians, dentists, pharmacists, acupuncturists, anyone in the healing world, Ayurvedic practitioners, take this work and master it now. So then there is a in-person 5-day immersion. It's called Mastering the Healer Within. And this is actually where I go and teaching how to test and tap into a human body and find out literally within minutes everything that is happening in that system.
Amazing, amazing. So what is, Elena, this is, you have a great vision and a big vision. Tell us about your vision for the future. What does it look like?
My vision is, number 1, to eliminate chronic illness. Number 2, to awaken each human being to their own ability to heal themselves and finally be responsible for themselves.
Beautiful. And how can we contact you?
Wholistic.com.
Okay. And the book is available on Amazon. That's correct, isn't it?
Ebook is available on Kindle, on Amazon, and hard copy is available on Wholistic.com in the next week.
Ah, exciting. Exciting. I'm so excited. Thank you very much for your time. Delighted to interview Elena, and so much information there. I mean, I'm going to go away and Google some of the things that she talked about, because there was some great new stuff in there for me. So hope you enjoyed that, everyone, and you take care.